So hello, I'm Simon Hedley, and welcome to today's episode of Pause, Stop, Reset. I am really excited to introduce you to today's amazing guest. He's someone I've got to know over the last year or so. He's a really good friend and so much more, so much heart, experience, and he's really committed to making a difference where he can. And I really can't wait to get to know him today. So Kellan, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fantastic, and I'm really grateful to be here talking to you. Simon, I love what I've gotten to know about you and how you're doing stuff, and I'm psyched that you're doing this set of interviews. So cool.
Love it. Now, I am, and I may pause, stop, reset you during this conversation. Is that okay? If I ever do that, it's meant with love, it's not personal.
Yeah, do whatever you want. It's your show,
okay,
man.
Good. So to begin with, let's start with the basics. For people that may not know you yet or haven't caught up with your latest resets, who are you and what are you focused on today?
I'm Kellan, and I have had a time in my life where I was one of those one-name people. But for those that care, my last name is Fluckiger, which may contribute to why I was one of those one-name people. But Fluckiger is the last name. Anyway, my latest version, I'm a coach. I'm a catalyst. I help people who are ending addiction to mediocrity and are committed to creating the best version of themselves and adding copious good to the world.
I love that. Very clear, very passionate. You can hear Kellan's audio voice coming. A lot of audio in the background. Yeah, you've done a lot of audio work and communication work. And so if we look back on everything you've done, right, what's been the biggest shifts and resets you've been through? And I know a little bit. I can guess what they're, but from your perspective, what's been the biggest shifts and resets you've been through?
Are we talking over life or over the last 5 minutes?
Let's go for both, man. Let's get out there.
The last 5 minutes, the biggest reset was seeing your face. It got me into a place of thinking about your audience and wondering with genuine curiosity where their hearts are and if they are affected by what's gone on in the world in the last 18 months, if they are themselves in reset and moving forward. So that's what happened in the last 5 minutes. In the last lifetime, there's been too many to fit into this podcast, but the most recent was my transition from a 30-year career in energy to deciding to be a coach. That was in 2007, end of 7, beginning of 8, so now 13 years ago, with divine intervention, the cessation of a many-year drug habit, and a bunch of divine changes that sort of said, complete stop on what you're doing right now and go in a new direction. And so that has caused me to do things like write 13 books in the last 10 years and start a coaching practice and completely walk away from a very successful executive and consulting career because it was killing me.
I love it. And that's really clear. And I say there's so many you've been to, and your books and your stories, it's got that in. And I'm really curious, of these three, the pausing, the stopping, the resetting, and you mentioned like the divine stuff sometimes for you, what's been the hardest and why do you think that was? To pause something, to stop something, or do that complete reset?
I find that the hardest thing are the long embedded stories we carry, wherever they came from. You know, whatever experiences in our lives, I call it our BD, beliefs, definitions, experiences, expectations, and perceptions. Those things that are long-standing about how we believe the world works, to reset those. Pausing I do a lot of pausing every day for meditation and for connection with the spirit, for, direction and that kind of stuff. And stopping this and starting that, those are all important. But a complete reset of deeply held beliefs takes the most work, the most trust, and the most surrendering to the answer to Einstein's question, is the universe friendly, which I now know is a resounding yes. But that complete reset is required the most effort and focus and dedication.
I love that. And dedication, I know you have. I really do. And you've been on the roller coaster of life. You play out there. You play big. So if you could take everything you've been through, right, and you could send those lessons back to your younger self, what's the most important lesson you wish you could give your younger self and why?
Oh, that's an easy question, but the answer's not short. Well, yeah, I guess it is. The thing I carried from my mid-teens to my mid-50s, so 40 years, was a deep-set conviction that I wasn't good enough, and that regardless of corporate and financial success, that was all a charade, and I would be a failure if everybody, quote, knew the real Kellan, or whatever version, if they only knew, that kind of feeling. So I would tell my younger self, starting at 15 plus, somewhere in that time, to drop the pretending and to live authentically. And by that, I know it's a buzzword and we all hear too much of it, but to live in a transparent way and stop trying to pretend, but instead lean into and explore. No pretending, but rather a journey of exploring who you are, what you can be, and what you really have to offer to yourself, to the world, and so forth. That would be the message. And I don't even know how I'd say it or get myself to believe it, but that would be the message.
I love that. And you know, before the recording began, we were talking about trying to get it right and the technology and the stuff we did sort of to do it the professional way, right? That you think people would have put on that gets many of us doing it. And let's just drill you down a bit further when we go on a bit, right? So you've done the coaching thing. What would be like one exercise, one action our listener can do today? They get that and they're trying to do it, but like, how can they start that process? Or like, even for me, I know that's something I've really got to work on myself, is being open to going, it's gone wrong. So what's something I can do to improve that, do you think?
Those that dare greatly fail greatly. That is a principle that it took me a long time to understand and accept, because I equated failure to be a permanent mark, a black mark, an evil strike across the life and character that you want to be. And so what I say now to my clients and myself is, yes, those that dare greatly fail greatly, and carry a big blanket of forgiveness, compassion toward yourself for daring greatly. Get in front of the mirror every day and tell yourself you love yourself and what you're about today. Look at your calendar and see the faces of those you're going to meet, even if you don't know them or talk to. I love doing that about my clients. I did that with you today. Like, who am I talking to? What can I bring? And I don't care if I fail greatly. I've got a blanket of forgiveness. It's got nothing to do with who I'm being. It has to do with what I'm trying to do. And if it didn't work, so what? Pause, reset, do it again. And no reflection or drama about your true value as a divine being.
A lot of stuff in there. We can go back and listen back to that, I think. This is the stuff that I know, and I've been talking to you, you've been living through. You've been through these resets, sometimes for, sometimes other ways. And you have this divine message going on for you. You've got sort of a passion. You hear Kellan sort of going into Kellan in flow mode. It's a lovely thing. So we'll get it down shorter later on. So maybe books and movies have helped. Has a book or movie helped you pause, stop, reset, and how? I know I've had many moments of reading a book, a recommendation, or a random thing I've picked up in a bookshop, or movie on a plane. What's that been for you? Any book or movie that stands out that's helped you pause, stop, and reset?
Yeah, and the numbers are too big to count. I have two books right over here, and one of them is that old favorite, As a Man Thinketh, by James Allen, which was written in 1903. And I have another one by a fellow named Neville Goddard. And you see these books are about 30 pages or 50 pages, but the truths that they all focus on and that we so miss is that we have within us the freedom to choose or rearrange or reorganize or pause, stop, reset our thoughts, and by so doing, slightly or radically change the direction of our growth. Get the weeds out of the garden. You never lose that choice. You might abdicate it. You might beat the crap out of it. You might choose not to use it, but you don't lose it. So those two are right now. I have a book called The Way of Mastery, which is a big old thick honker written by the Shanti Christo Foundation in the voice of Jesus, which is a book that takes at least a year to read. And I read really, 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 really fast.
I got sent a copy a few months ago, and it's very interesting insight bits, and I love it. I'm going to actually just sort of drag something out there. That thing about choice, one of the things I believe is it's only when you know and you can pause, stop, reset that you're able to reclaim that choice. I'm going to go back down your addiction journey, but in those moments when you're in that addict mode, you definitely, you don't have it, but you don't think you've got it, and then you can't access it, and it's a crazy thing, right?
Totally agree. There's a book about addiction called The Waterfall Principle, and it talks about the cycle of addiction. And it doesn't matter if it's a substance, a behavior, or belief. If you're in the canoe and you're 10 feet from the waterfall, you're going over. You know what I mean? You can't stop that. Yeah. So the game, and this is with negative thinking or addictive behavior, the whole gamut, is to start recognizing earlier and earlier the telltale signs. Because if you don't wake up until you're 10 feet from the waterfall, you're screwed. If you wake up 100 feet from the waterfall, maybe you can white knuckle fight your way to the shore. But if you start recognizing the early feelings, they call that in the book the safe waters of recovery, because they're talking in addiction language. But whatever it is, if you start learning and training yourself to recognize earlier, you carry the blanket of forgiveness so you don't have to die and beat yourself to death every time something happens that's not what you meant. And you learn to recognize those signals, then you can move back your radar to pick it up when you're in the safe waters of change or recovery. And then you have the power of interdiction to not go down the negative thinking, the negative behavior, the addiction track, the whatever it is. So it's a process of learning to hear in your own heart and mind earlier and earlier.
I love it. And funny enough, two things just happened there. We had the police sirens, we heard the police sirens there, and it got me thinking about one of your phrases, that thing about mayhem.
Incidental mayhem. So I was reading a post just before I got on here of someone that said, life happens no matter what you plan and you have no control over your life. And he was going down the explanation that he had a day planned and his daughter swallowed a necklace. And the whole day was upended because they had to rush to the emergency room, and he showed an x-ray of her lungs, and it showed a beautiful lung and everything, and then this heart-shaped necklace right in the middle of it, which was she'd swallowed, right? And I don't know how old she was. I didn't read it that thoroughly. And so he went down and said, doesn't matter what you plan, life happens anyway. And I agree with that, but I would have added, not in any way correcting what he said, because everything he said was beautiful. The choice that we still have is how we integrate those incidental mayhems. Because yes, that's incidental mayhem. It might be as small as I stubbed my toe, I burned the toast, I had a flat tire on the way to work, or as it might be as big as the daughter swallowed a necklace, or I got a cancer diagnosis. All those things are incidental mayhem. Some have a day of consequence, some have years of consequence, some have 5 minutes. The choice I have forever is what do I do in myself and around me with those events.
100%. And that's what this is all about, right? And not just what do you do, but how are you about it? That metaphor of your the canoe and the waterfall. You can go, it's a waterfall. You can be like, yay, it's a waterfall. And, you get to choose that bit of how you're going to be with what's going on. And we'll keep it light for this, but, I'll talk offline. There's some stuff people are dealing with in the world that is really heavy and some that's really light. And people forget this. We get caught up in that drama and sucked into that black hole vortex, which is crazy. And I didn't quite catch the book title. You had the As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And the one in your other book you mentioned?
The other one is by a fellow named Neville Goddard, and he's a long time dead too, like, Think and Grow Rich, 50, 100 some years ago. But that book was called Prayer. He's written a whole bunch of really thin books that really center around the same thing, that all the externalities are incidental and that our fundamental choice in life that determines our experience and ultimately what we take with us is how we behave. What we choose as our part during all those externalities, because we all have them, and some big, some small, but choose it. So the two books were As a Man Thinketh, and the other one was named Prayer. The author's Neville Goddard, and he's got a whole bunch of them. This just happens to be the one I'm reading right now, but I've got several others on the shelf.
You are an avid reader, creator, writer, and it blows my mind what you get up to. Interestingly, at my end, I had another incidental mayhem moment where it's paused on the screen. I was like, no, keep talking. So we could go back and redo it, but no, we're going to pause, stop, and reset and go forward. So on this theme, what was the event or experience that most caused you personally to have to pause, stop, reset? And what helped you through that?
The biggest thing happened in 2007. So I was a $3,000 a week cocaine addict. And this is a story you're not going to believe, and I really don't care. I'm going to tell it anyway. So this was a Friday night. I was home. I was living with 4 teenagers as a single dad. I was single again for the third time. And because I was making more money than I knew what to do with, and $3,000 a week was lunch money, I had all the latest gear, gadgets, and I had Giant in the house. The thing is I'm not a TV watcher, so I actually didn't know how to turn it on. And Friday night, I watched television, and so I had to ask my 16-year-old daughter, how do I turn this on? And laughingly, she grabbed the remote and then turned it on and then threw it on the couch and left. It started a program, and I didn't mean it for it to be the beginning of a program. I don't even know what time it was. But the program was one called Intervention, which you may or may not be familiar with. It's a reality TV show about people who are in trouble in one way or another, and their families have had enough, and so they stage an intervention. And so they get a professional in and they confront them and either try to get them into, some kind of help or rehab, or it's not always about drugs, but sometimes, whatever it is, right? And that's what turned on. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not watching this. I watched it for about 10 minutes. And wow, the protagonist in the show, and again, this is not fiction, this is nonfiction, was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched about 10 minutes of this and said, yeah, I'm not watching this.
I'm
Turned
out.
it off.
Yeah, thanks.
Stomped off. And for some reason, a little while later, maybe a half hour, I felt compelled to turn the TV back on. So now I knew how. So I turned on the TV again, and it was in the middle of the hour, and I don't have a DVR or other recording device. And that program started again from the beginning.
Wow. Okay.
When I turned the television back on. Okay. And so I'm like shaking. I sat down in the chair and thought, holy crap, I must need to watch this program. So that was the beginning of the journey. I watched the program. I went to bed a couple of hours later, and then I left the body and was in a 17-hour out-of-body experience. I didn't come to till the next afternoon at 5 o'clock. And went to hell and had some sort of experience with the divine that I'd suffered a lot during that. But then at the end, the voice said, it is enough. I woke up and came to and immediately disposed of $1,000 worth of stuff and thought, okay, we are finished. And I went from $3,000 a week to zero in one day.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that story, and I love the sort of, even yourself, like, you're not going to believe this, but you know you lived it. And those experiences are so vital. Yeah, it's like, it worked for you. I guess you've been through a few, but didn't know that. That's interesting. And it's funny sometimes how those experiences that shape us, if you let them, I know that you sort of took it on to let that happen, right?
You don't have to. Like, it was my choice. That happened. I woke up, the sun was streaming in the window. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I could have said, that was a wacko nightmare, and gone to my stash and gotten high. Instead, I said, I think this means change. And I embarked on what was a very difficult path instead of defaulting to the easy and obvious. And so that's what you said a minute ago, which is it is our choice in those moments which fork to take. And I chose, because I decided it was right, to take the upward path and not the downward slope. So that was simple, but not easy.
The best things rarely are, right? That's the thing. And Segue us perfect. My next question for you. People listening in, many of them, as you say, maybe having had a rough year with the lockdown and everything else that's gone on. Maybe they're doing great, want to improve things. If they're looking to shift and reset what's possible for their life and their lives and businesses, what's your biggest suggestion for them? Out of your tool set and skill set, what's something that can help people sort of shift and upgrade what they're doing?
The most powerful tool you have to connect with what is possible for your next step or your next big leap is to take time every day alone with yourself. You can call it meditation, you can call it prayer, you can call it whatever you want, but take time, even if you only start with 5 minutes at a time, but work up to maybe 30 minutes where you're doing nothing. And your whole focus is just to relax and be quiet, to be where you are and when you are. So your mind's not thinking about what's coming or what's been. And, meditation people say focus on the breath. Whatever. Do what you need to. Get a basic primer on meditation if you want, but learn to still the noise. I describe meditation as 3 simple steps. 1, slow down enough to be where you are. Step 2, be still enough to notice what is there. And step 3 is trust that what comes to you is truth. That right there, as weird as that might sound to somebody, is the single most effective, immediate thing you can do to get clarity on the next step or the next month.
Well, it sounds like that's the big takeaway as well. So just let's recap those. What are the 3 steps?
Slow down enough to be where you are. And what I mean by that is we're most often somewhere else or somewhen else. We're either listening to things going on around us outside in the next room, or in our thoughts, we're somewhen else, reviewing endlessly something that already happened, anticipating something that's coming. We're anywhere but here and now. So slow down enough. And this takes some practice because I've had clients, a lot of them say, my mind is too fast, racing, I can't. And the answer is, okay, practice. Slow down enough. And, I don't have time. Yeah, you do. Because what I've discovered is that this practice creates time. There are less mistakes. There are less do-overs. There are less rabbit trails and blind alleys. And so it creates far more time, like times 5 or times 10 than the half hour it takes.
I'm nodding away here. I've Tai Chi for 20 years, and that was the big thing. You practice slowly, but yet you get more done when you're being effective, and it's that Zen moment that comes together. So step 1, they're slowing down. Step 2
is be still enough to notice what is there. because there are always thoughts and feelings under the surface. It's like that old Kung Fu episode where the guy was graduating from the Shaolin Temple and he was walking out all proud of himself, and the master was talking to him and he said, but Grasshopper, do you notice the cricket at your feet? And, his mind was occupied with other things. And here and now, there was a cricket chirping at his feet. And so the idea is be still enough to notice what is there. And that's just not physically, although that's where you start, your leg on the chair, the foot on the floor, like what is here and now, but be still enough as you slow down to notice what is there. So that's part 2. And part 3 is trust. Learn to trust that what comes to you is truth. And that is about connecting to your intuition, to your greater knowing, to universal truth, to the same source that muscle testing and those kinds of things tap into. Trust what comes to you is truth, but those things coming to you usually come as small whispers, not inglorious slaps across the face. So you've got to slow down and be still enough to hear them. And then you need to learn and choose to trust that what comes to you is truth.
Love it. I love it. And hopefully if you're listening and you get some value from today, I know I do, whenever I talk to you, and I love the energy that you have. Based on that, it's like a different question. We wrap up this thing shortly. Who do you think would be an amazing guest, and why would you love to listen to their answers?
Oh, an amazing guest, I think, would be, I know so many coaches that I work with or that I'm in masterminds with that would be fabulous guests. I don't know if Ankush Hain, Jain, Ankush Hain would be really good. He's a 3 principles coach like Michael Neal, who's in I think mostly in London. There is Kameen Bell Samuel, Kamin, Kameen Bell Samuel. These may be people you don't know or probably don't, but they would be great guests.
What about them has them be people you'd love to hear from or love to have us share?
I'd love those 2 people. There's a fellow named Manny St. Victor, who's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, who's now moved away from medicine, and he helps people through hypnosis and stuff like that. He'd be a good guest, Manny St. Victor. Another person that might be really interesting is a retired physician, Mort Orman. Dr. Mort Orman, he's no relation to Susie Orman. He's written the book on, literally the book on eliminating stress,
wow,
which is a big thing these days. He created National Stress Awareness Month. So Dr. Mort Orman would be a great guest
and what I'm
for you.
hearing is those are people that are focused on helping other people. And as a result, they're going to be able to share stuff that will help other people a lot. Is that correct?
All 4 of those are that. Yes, absolutely.
Love it. So you and I can collect about that offline, and thank you for sharing those people. Some of those I know, some not so well yet. And if you're listening in, you can go Google online and find the little action takers, and trusting this message, trusting the intuition sometimes of where we're going to go. So as a thank you for you and for our listeners listening in, for people who want to learn more about you, Kellan, and what you do, what's the best way for them to get connected and sort of start that journey?
I share most of my stuff. I use Facebook, so I have 2 pages that matter, and then some others that you can find there. It's just my name, Kellan Fluckiger. There are only 2 of us in the world, and the other one's my oldest son, so you won't have any trouble because I'm 65 and he's not. So you'll be able to see I don't have much hair and I have a little gray beard, so you'll be able to tell. And the other one is my business page, I guess, Kellan Fluckiger, Personal Achievement Coach. So connect with me there, friend me if you like, send a message. And the other easy way is my website, which is Coach Kellan Fluckiger. Just my name, Kellan Fluckiger.
Pause, reset, it's perfect timing. So yeah, Kellan, Kellan, Fluckiger, Fluckiger. Of all the books you've written, which is the one is like, the one they should start reading? From the horse's mouth here, from Kellan directly, the one book that everybody should go and start reading of yours, which is that?
Walking Without Fear.
Love it. Walking Without Fear. So we're going to wrap up today's Pause Stop Reset. Kellan, thank you so much for coming along. It's been an amazing episode, sharing your time, insights with us. And what I found most valuable was this ongoing theme for you about trusting that divine. And those 3 steps of slowing down, noticing you're slowing down and what's going on, and then trusting what shows up, which can be the most daunting thing. And I love the way you play for life, and you've gone through it and you share so transparently about, the stuff that isn't the shiny stuff. Because you've got incredible results to creative people around the world. But this bit of being open, authentic, I really love. So thank you. It's time for us to wrap up Pause Stop Reset. And if you've got value and get more value, make sure you go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, give us 5 stars and a comment, and share what you most loved from Kellan today. We'll see you next time, and thank you, Kellan, for being an awesome guest. See you soon.
Thank you.
You've just heard a great podcast. Want to start your own? Email Jason at apodcastcompany.com.